Boom shakalaka. Hey, good evening, folks. How in the heck are you? It is I, Bill Sylvie, your humble, hairy holiday host. How the heck are you? It's good to see you. We're waiting on Kyle to join us, and as soon as he does, we'll get the show on the road. In the meantime, I hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic. Sorry for the schedule interrupt us the last couple of days. Things have just been, kind of, eh. You know how it is, right? Right. Well, anyway, I hope everybody is doing hunky and or dory. If you're out there, give us a comment. I want to apologize to folks over on Facebook who can't watch this live. Uh, I don't have a premium StreamYard account, folks. Can't afford one. I hope to get one in the new year so I can stream to Facebook and to YouTube for these times when Kyle is on the show. Um, that is my sincere hope. So we'll do that, and then we'll be able to have Kyle on. We'll be able to have Facebook on. Sorry, when Kyle is on. But in the interim, short of this janky kind of thing that doesn't work properly, you know, I gotta do it like this. I gotta do it where it just goes to YouTube, and if you watch the videos on Facebook, you gotta watch the replay, or you gotta come over to YouTube. So that's just the way it goes here in live streaming land. Rob Calculus 817. Or is that some kind of weird ASCII smiley there? I don't know. 817. That's right. Rob is talking about the number of subs we've got. We're up to 817. That is a lovely early Christmas present that I have there. Thank all of you guys. Thank the heck out of you. Love your guts for doing that for me. 817. We are drawing ever closer to having that thing. That's right. That convention is coming. I know. I'm getting there, Rob. So yeah, we're moving on up. I hadn't flipped my shit and gone on a couple of rants earlier back in October. We might be at 8:30. It was precipitous drop off after I lost my temper about one thing or the other. You guys just got the raw unfiltered Bill Sylvie there. While we're waiting on Kyle, one thing I want to show off. Okay, so last year, the missus got this lovely Star Wars Advent calendar for me. You guys see that? There we go. And if that shocks and offends your pop culture sensibilities, what can I say? They have Advent calendars for every, like, they have wine Advent calendars now. It's like you open a little thing and you got a little bottle of wine. Those sell out like the Aldi. If you guys are familiar with Aldi, and I know some of our folks from overseas might even be more familiar with Aldi than folks here in the United States. They're a great they're a great I don't say discount grocery store, but their prices are better than usual. But Aldi does like a wine advent calendar that they get limited stocks of in every store. I just doing grocery shopping one day, and I got there before Aldi opened because, man, I'm gonna get my grocery shopping the hell out of the way before the afternoon heat sets in. I'm in Florida. It is always hot in the afternoon in Florida. So yeah, I go over to Aldi and I'm waiting in the parking lot. I got there before they open. I need to get a wine Lego Star Wars combo advent calendar. Do they make those? They should. They'd sell twice as fast. But so I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, waiting for the store open. This guy comes out. There's like all these, well, I guess we call them Karens now. Lots of manic pixie shag fade haircuts. The guy, like, I'm right by the door, and he's like, "Are you here for a wine advent calendar, sir?" I'm like, no, I'm here for some cheap pork chops and steaks. So, you know, you guys occasionally get name brand cereals in. I'm here for that. So he's like, oh, okay. So he moves on, and he's like handing out numbers. Like, you know, ladies, one each, please. Actually, I don't think he referred to them as ladies, but a whiskey. You know what? Okay, that is worth looking up. That is okay. Yes, if you just, and this is on Bing, which sucks. So yeah, whiskey advent calendars. There are multiple. The Japanese whiskey advent calendar, the bourbon advent calendar, and the Scotch whiskey advent calendar. Orders your today with a click. This is wow. Yeah, so the 5 best whiskey advent calendars in 2021. Holy cats. Yeah. There's enough that they rate them, and there are a top 5. Wrap your head around that one. So Kyle is here. I'm gonna grab the Star Wars Advent pieces. So I'll open this up, and then we'll have Kyle on. There you go. That's what the inside looks like. You can get a good look at that. No, you can't. Not from there. And let's see. So let's start with. Do we start with day 1 or day 24? You know what? Let's start with day 1. So day 1, we have an A-wing fighter. You guys can see that. That's pretty spiffy. I love the A-wing. The A-wing is like it's like the little Fiat sports car of Rebel fighters. And now, because it's day 2 now, day 2 of the next day of Christmas. So we're going to show off that one, and then we're going to have Kyle on. And who do we have? This is one of the guys from the newer one. We have Poe Dameron, I think is who that is. So it's not Han. So there you go. Poe Dameron and an A-wing fighter in the Star Wars Advent calendar. So there we go. The first 2 days of Christmas out of the way. And here is Kyle Schuant. Hello, Kyle. How the heck are you, man?
Hey, boys and girls, how you doing?
We are doing hunky-dory, man.
It took a while to get myself organized this morning.
Completely understandable, my friend. Completely understandable.
That's good to hear. Well,
so,
it's mornings here in this part of the world, so it sometimes takes some organizing. I'm either dropping kids off to school, in which case wandering around going, where do I have to be now? Or I slept in and I just got up, in which case I'm going, what? Blink, you know, what's happening in the world? As it goes.
Right.
You're all familiar with that feeling.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So it goes. But good to see you, man. I'm glad you're here. Rob asks, of the Star Wars Advent pieces, do they come put together? They don't, but this is my Advent calendar from last year. So I put them all together last year. So my little Star Wars Advent pieces are pre-put together. I don't know if our viewers expect me to like take them apart and put them back in the calendar for next year. That ain't going to happen. I'm going to sit here and fumble around with those
I
things
think
on
they
camera.
do. I think our viewers have got high. I think our viewers have got high standards, and they expect you to do that every year.
Yes, well, we'll talk about that in a production meeting, folks, and get back to you on whether or not I'm going to be taking the Advent pieces apart before and then putting them together on camera for you. We'll bring that up with our show producer.
You have an episode devoted just to putting Lego together.
Yeah, no kidding. You know, that is something I am kind of shocked at this juncture, given how WotC is pushing lifestyle brand D&D, that they just haven't gone whole hog in and said, okay, Lego Dungeons and Dragons. You know, get little Lego people to make fighters.
I was surprised. I was surprised that never happened because it would be relatively easy figurines and dungeon making.
Yeah. I mean, many is the time that people have, you know, I've been showing off Dwarven Forge or talking about Dwarven Forge, and they're like, well, I just use Lego and I have been forever. You know, we don't do painted minis. We just have Lego minifigs and snap together dungeons. And I can appreciate the economy. I mean, I have 2 gargantuan buckets of Lego that our daughters collected from when they were toddlers on up. And I mean, it is pounds and pounds and pounds of the stuff. If I started assembling 2-inch scale dungeons, God, dude, it'd spill off this table. I'd have more of that than I would Dwarven Forge.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's real interesting using Legos in gaming. Now, I think you get on this end of the hobby, a lot of times you get like hipsters, like anti-snobs. I'm like, yeah, you know, I have Dwarven Forge out on the table, and that's far too expensive, and it gets in the way of good play. If we need miniatures, we'll simply use
dice. How hipsters in miniature gaming? There too.
They're everywhere. We should have kept our hobbies more. So I've said it time and again.
They've got the ironic beard and dare I say it, cardigan.
Ironic beard, cardigan. You know, during pauses in the game. During pauses in the game, they're posting on Twitter about their vinyl collections. You know, it's just. But anyway, so I wanted to have a banner up, so I put that banner up. So there's a banner for you guys to look at now. There is a Lego D&D. It's by an. Well, then that's not Lego, is it? I mean, that you know, we could be snobs about it and say, well, Connect blocks are the same thing, but I mean, go completely mainstream, man. You know, just go out there and say, hey, Lego, let's do this thing, man. There are 2 offshoot Lego companies. Lego too good for D&D. But speaking of role-playing games, Kyle, I believe you received something in the mail the other day.
I did. So I've had 2 game experiences, I guess, worthy of discussion recently. So
bring it.
I had so last Saturday, the wife and kids went away on holiday. Well, not a holiday, you know, they went on a day trip, and I was left at home. And I tried to organise something with local geeks, but I wasn't organised enough. But it just so happened that I was in a gaming channel, first-person shooter YouTube channel where a bunch of like ex-Marines and stuff are playing first-person shooters and that. And I just mentioned in passing that I did role-playing games and stuff. And nobody responded at all. The conversation just went on, and
Crickets.
I felt like the lonely geek sitting at the back of the party. At somebody else's more exciting, more trendy party. So, oh well. And then
I am reminded of the the IT crowd. Well, we're off to play some D&D this weekend. Oh, is that some kind of a sex thing? Ha, far from it, Jen.
Pretty much. And so anyway, like last week, it was about 2 weeks after that, and some guy messages me privately. You know, oh, you know, I do role-playing games and stuff. So he'd recently joined the Discord, so he must have joined and like gone back and viewed through 300 messages of people or whatever to suss out what the place was like and come across mine. And he gave me a game group to play online, just for a one-off anyway. A bunch of guys who don't normally play. So there was that. So it was the conflict experience.
Yes.
Which we can talk about. And there was also, I got this in the mail.
Oh, Morrow project. I do want you to talk about both.
Yeah. And yeah, so I could talk about both. I'd probably rabbit on too much if I talk about conflict. So we'll probably talk about the Morrow project. But this is the 3rd edition. I haven't been able to get my hands on a 1st edition. But I like the way they present it as if it's like a training manual or something.
Yeah.
So it's like it says Morrow Industries Training Division. And then there's Morrow Industries Controlled Document 1986-06143.02 Confidential TML-GB01. Yeah, basically as if it's a training manual. Except training manuals probably wouldn't have inside covers like that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now this is essentially the one sentence review is that it's a classic 1980s combat oriented role playing game. So it has all those things that you expect of it, with lots of charts and lots of rules. It starts off with the war. World War III begins on Thursday, November 18th, 1989. It's oddly specific, but anyway.
With the launching of the first strike. Was weird that day. Thank you. I couldn't put my finger on it.
That's when you diverge. That's when the timelines diverge, Bill. With the launching of the first strike by the United States against the Soviet Union. The attack was initiated by the US after the NORAD command center detected an apparent Russian missile attack force coming in over the North Pole. It was later found that the attack force was actually a computer training program that was accidentally fed into the NORAD computers and communication network. Whoops! And it goes on like that. Anyway, they've got the targets. List of all, so you can go through your home country and see how nuked it gets and why. You know, like Oakland, naval, and why it's a target. So there's some places that are just cities, so they're targets like Phoenix and Tucson. And then there's Oakland, California gets nuked because it's got a naval biowar lab. And then it's got the kind of missile that it gets hit by too. So there's the SS-18M1, the SS-16, the SSN-17, and so on. Right, so they go through a couple of pages of all the targets. And then they tell you what they are. The SS-16 has a range of 8,000 kilometers. It has a single warhead with a yield of 1 megaton, and it has 60 of them. Then there's a little chart, nuclear bomb explosion data. So they tell you exactly how large the crater will be and all of it. Now, what I enjoyed was random missiles. Due to radiation levels affecting the incoming missiles, the guidance circuits of some of the last of the missiles would go random and impact almost anywhere. There is an allotment of 150 missiles to account for this happening. This gives approximately 3 missiles per state. I like how they're evenly spread too.
Yes.
It's very egalitarian. To determine the missile aiming point, divide the map you are using into 10 sections. This is general and need not be exact. Yeah, it's just nuclear bombs, doesn't need to be exact.
No.
Roll 1d10 to find which square the missile's head for, blah, blah, blah. Okay. Missile type. So first you roll for the D100 for the missile type to see if they just get like a single 1 megaton warhead, a single 2 megaton warhead, or they're really unfortunate and they get the 10 MIRVs of 2 megatons each. And then there's a missile accuracy, roll 1d8. 1 to 7 hits the target, 8 misses. Go to number 3. And then there's a miss distance, burns up on re-entry, no effect, misses 20 to 40 kilometers, blah, blah, blah. And the direction of miss. So basically, you've got your D&D oil flask miss splash table, except for nuclear weapons.
I mean, ultimately, that's the logical end of I want to throw something on my opponent and burn them, right?
Yeah. Example, a GM decides to aim a missile at Hazleton, Pennsylvania. Brackets, he received a speeding ticket there once. He rolls a 51 on 1D100, which indicates an SS-19 missile is used. On the accuracy roll 1d8, he rolls an 8, which indicates the missile veers from the target. The GM then looks at table number 3. His roll of 1d6 results in a 2. It shows that the missile impacted 33 kilometers from the target. The direction of the miss is southwest. The bomb detonates in a ground burst, with the pattern being that of a 6 MIRV warhead. The missile ends up obliterating a small town called New Boston, just off Highway 81.
Wow.
I haven't looked at a map to check whether he still gets the town where he got the speeding ticket. So they've got radioactive contamination, biological contamination, lots of rules for it, mutations for it, of course. Now this is the bit where I get where I say it's the classic 1980s thing. Okay, so you generate stats by 4d6 minus 4. So basically 0 to 20, but it's weighted to the middle. It's a bell curve rather than just rolling d20. And then you, as well as having the stats, you end up with the derived stats. Like the next step in creating a character is to calculate the structure points and blood points. So strength times your constitution divided by 100 is both your structure points and your blood points. The structure point value gives the maximum amount of damage a character may receive, while the blood point is representative of the total amount of blood in the character's body. The two values are started as equal but are used separately. When a character is hit, they suffer physical damage and blood loss. It is possible for a character to suffer a great deal of physical damage with almost no blood loss and still die. The reverse is also true. So on the one hand, you could have somebody just like tie you down and kick you to death. And on the other hand, you could have somebody tie you down and just bleed you out. Leave you physically attacked. It's obviously, the authors obviously considered it important to distinguish between these two. Because it was the 1980s. And then
that is a hallmark of 1980s, and I would say early 1990s role-playing design. It's like, well, you were bitten by 4 fleas. If you'd been bitten by 5 fleas, you'd be in trouble. But you were bitten by 4. But we have to roll location because you might scratch it too much and give yourself a blood infection. Then we'll roll on the blood infection table.
Speaking of location, okay, you don't simply have the structure points and blood points. They are broken up by body location, body part location. So you've got your torso, which is 38%. Each leg is 19%, but you can break the torso, the leg down to thigh of 8%, calf of 5%, and so on. So and then you can roll for blood type as well. I guess so that you can donate blood to each other. Yeah. And so my favorite thing is that right after this super realistic, or at least super detailed, with the theory that detail leads to realism, following up on this is psionics. So we can have a super realistic game. Now, here's about roll for your chance of psionics.
Well, it's the thought that counts.
Yeah. So then they've got something movement, which is something like the readiness in my game, except it's not based on your combat experience. It's based on your dexterity. Essentially, you have 1 to 5 movements in a combat round, and things like taking a move, a step, or mounting or dismounting, or drawing or firing a weapon is 1 movement, all the way to like 6 movements to reload a missile launcher, or 30 movements to don or remove powered armor. So,
I have to say, I've been playing Fallout 4 a lot lately. I love me some Fallout 4. And the premise of the Morrow project, did you want to talk about the presence, Kyle, or do you mind if I?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Well, given the presence of the Morrow project, that it has power armor and psionics in it also, makes me wonder if the creators of the Bethesda Fallout, I'm a bad gamer. I haven't played the original Fallout games, the 2D isometric ones, but it makes me wonder if they didn't look at a Morrow project rather strongly.
Look, I'm sure they did. I mean, how many people are on these sorts of teams? Yeah, like making their computer role-playing games. How many people are there? I mean, there's
thousands. Yeah. I mean, nowadays.
Well, nowadays, but like back in the 90s, say, when Fallout started, would have been like 100 people or something, yeah?
Oh, yeah, if that.
Yeah, and amongst 100 people, there's going to be some gamers, and particularly there's a big overlap between computer gamers and role-playing gamers as well. I know you know this, but you must have forgotten. When they were deciding the original system for Fallout, they were going to use GURPS.
They were exactly. They were going to use GURPS, and Steve Jackson.
But then they had a nerd fight, so they decided not to. So if they've looked at GURPS, they would have looked at others.
Yeah,
they would have looked at other games.
And I have to share a bit of a funny about that. So in Fallout 3 and all the subsequent first-person ones, you can find still operating computers for reasons I'm not going to launch into it. And if they control a security system or are themselves just secured machines with greater or lesser chances of success and difficulty and so on, you can try and hack the terminals. And it's very clever because you basically play a word guessing game and you have 4 tries from a list of possible passwords that are stirred into a soup of random characters to guess. I mean, the words are uniform; they're by themselves, but it looks like back in the old days, for those of you who would use disk examining tools back in the old days of hacking, or maybe you still do. You do a hexadecimal dump, and you could see bits of code embedded in intelligible words and strings and stuff. So I was hacking a computer, and I don't remember where, I don't remember the conditions. I think it's randomly generated as to what terminals will get what possible password list. I am not making this up, and I so wish I'd taken a screenshot of it. One of the words that was a possible password, it wasn't the right one, but one of the words in one of the terminals was GURPS. I'm not making that up. They actually use the word GURPS, despite having had a snit with Steve Jackson games. So, anyway.
Well, they're probably going to make it the right password if it succeeded. If the deal succeeded. So next, there's a little bit about the background of the Morrow project. So there's this guy Morrow, and it's kind of implied that he's some sort of time traveler. That he's traveled back in time to set up teams, so that when the world does get nuked, these teams will emerge from the bunkers and rebuild civilization. It's kind of heavily implied that's because he brings back like fusion technology and things like that. And he brings back he brings out the technology of cold sleep tubes so that people can be frozen and revived and stuff. And so the idea is that the player characters are members of those teams. running around doing those missions. So they got a little bit about on that, about the premise of it, types of Morrow teams, reconnaissance, scientific Mars, that's mobile assault, rescue, and strike forces, specialty teams, like so there's engineering, agricultural, psychological teams, that sort of thing. And each player is going to be a member of one of those teams, and will have a certain role within that team, might double up and everything. So they say that, and they talk about freezing and that. And then there's lots of pictures of guns. lots of pictures of guns.
Another hallmark of 80s RPGs, gun porn.
Yeah. Including pictures of like 81 millimeter white phosphorus mortar rounds. So,
in case you were wondering what that looked like.
Yeah. There's a thanks earlier in the book of somebody who took photographs of all the weapons. Yeah, so they've got that, and in a 66-page book, about 10 pages are taken up by guns and ammo, which, like, it's the 80s. I'm impressed it was only 10 pages. And then there's another few pages of other equipment, like telescopes and packs and medikits and stuff. And then they go into energy weapons and devices, which strangely they don't have photographs, but they have little pictures of, like, you know, the equivalent of the laser RPG or something.
Right.
And then they've got the craft that you can tool around in. There's this one, which, yeah, it's basically like a mobile home or something. One of those ones. It reminds me, what was that telly show where they did that? They were tooling around a post-apocalyptic Earth.
Arc 2.
Yeah. It's kind of like Arc 2, but with a gun turret on top.
Or Damnation Alley, if you've seen Damnation Alley.
Yeah.
Jan Michael Vincent, George Papard.
Yeah.
Has nothing to do with a book by Norman Spinrad. Damnation Alley, basically, nuclear war base somewhere in the southwestern United States. They get a radio message from Albany, New York. Survivors are in Albany, New York. So they build a couple of super labs, light armored vehicles, but they're called Landmasters, and they have this. Now, the interesting thing about the Landmaster vehicles is they went to George Barris, who is a famous Hollywood prop vehicle designer. Like, if you have watched a science fiction movie from the 1960s up through the 1990s, and it had this impossible looking car that actually worked, it's because of George Barris. And he built the Landmaster. Everything you see on film, that's not an effect, that's not a special effect. The Landmaster could actually have these triple tires that could rotate on a common axle and get the thing out of holes and everything. It was a pretty neat vehicle, but it was the best part of the movie.
Well, then they've got basic loads, and this, to me, tells me the authors have got some military experience. Okay, because we haven't even got to the combat section yet, so I can't talk about the realism of that or whatever. But it's just the way they write things up. So they've got standard equipment and standard issue, and then they describe it as basic loads, which is kind of a military-ish term. And then there's weapons issue, individual basic loads. And the way they write things, it's 1 space Stoner M22 with 12 mags, 1 HP 35 with 3 mags. And then like they've got basic pack containing 1 comma mess kit, 1 comma compass, and so on. It's just the way they write things up. They write things up like an officer or a non-commissioned officer in the military would write things up. and they carefully tally up all the weights of everything. And you could see you could see some NCO or officer sitting there going, if I add this in, it goes to this weight, which might be a bit much for them. But so if I take this other thing out, and then there's different loads. So there's number 1 kit, which has got this stuff, and number 2 kit, which has got this other stuff. So it's like, you will be issued the number 2 kit. You will be issued the number 11 kit. Number 11? Damn it, that's the one that's got 16 grenades. No, 18 grenades. I don't want that. That's so heavy, man.
And let me tell you something, folks. The modern fighting man would look at those lists and just say, look, I just want the kit that doesn't have the ham and egg MRE in it, okay?
And as I said, that's why I think it was an officer or an NCO who wrote this up.
Yes.
And then it goes on to the use of firearms, and it starts getting complicated. So we won't get into that. But
it gets complicated because up to this point, I think the question that's looming in everyone's mind, Kyle, is: look, do the rules have different stages of sleep?
No, they don't. There's no sleep surprise rules.
Then how can you call it a role-playing game?
But there is a torso chart.
Oh God!
To accommodate being struck on different areas of the torso.
Just so you know, it's different being shot here versus being shot here versus being shot here.
Mm-hmm. No doubt, but is that interesting to accommodate in a role-playing game? And then there's whole body damage, the effect, blast damage, concussion, and stuff like that. Burn damage. I do enjoy the picture of this guy in powered armor holding up a car as a shield to fly. Now,
that is beautiful.
As you guys know, I'm all on board with realism. I wrote a whole game book, all 48 pages of it, that I consider to be realistic. I've made my best efforts to that end. And I'm all on board with the powered armor and holding up cars as a shield and that. But I don't think there's a lot of overlap in that Venn diagram. I think if you're going to have, I think this, at the risk of trying to sound quotable, if you're going to have power armor where you're holding up a car as armor, more armor, you've given up on having a realistic role-playing game.
You kind of have, yeah. What was it? There's like one forum that's kind of a hub for fans of Twilight 2000, and they can be a particular bunch when it comes to things. And
there is? Where is it? I haven't found it.
Let me see if I could find it. And I don't want anybody to think that I'm slagging any. Oh my, is it? Are we having a connection problem here? Here we go. Okay, so I'll share this link. I'll put this up. I'll just. I'll put that up and then I'll put it on the screen. So you can go there, you can check it out, forumjulin.com.
I've never heard of it.
But so for those Twilight 2000, and I've talked about it before on live streams. Kyle and I have talked about it before. It is very much like Morrow, the Morrow project. In that presages a nuclear war. This one takes place in the 90s.
So I'm just imagining like someone on RPGNet or something popping up to say, can I use the rules for the Morrow project to do Morrowind?
But because the game was written in the 80s, a little after I think Morrow Project may have even been the late 70s to start, but
Originally, yeah.
but they but because it's
Or
a
1980.
right, because it's an early 80s game, you know, they couldn't really predict a lot of what the US and other militaries would do with vehicles and weapons and that sort of thing. So you kind of either got to accept that the timeline works exactly like it works in the rules, or you've got a lot of legwork to do to redesign stuff. But given that you've got a little bit of latitude with the game, and the game is based a lot on what if, I did the legwork one day to say, what if, say, the U.S. Marines, the Marine Corps Acquisition Department is notorious for looking at stuff that the Army doesn't want and saying, well, we'll take that. I said, so what if the failed joint U.S. West German tank building project that created the was it the MBT-70? What if that, you know, the Marine Corps or a foreign power had said, well, no, that we can work with that. We can make that work. And I statted it up, and I wrote up a little bit of fluff text backstory, and I posted it. And now I didn't feel ass mad about it. I just think it's funny, and I'll explain why. Lots of people are like, well, this is ridiculous. I mean, this is not something, this is, honestly, no, I don't know. And I just, you know, I just took it in stride, whatever, you know, a niche role-playing game, forum for a niche role-playing game. Some people didn't like the, I mean, they didn't give me a lot of shit about it. It was just not like a big hit. In that same thread, somebody statted up the dropship from Aliens as like, well, what if the Army made, or, you know, the Air Force or whoever made a few of these? And they're like, oh, that's awesome. I could totally put that in. And I'm like, you're telling me a few prototypes or a small production run of a given tank doesn't suit your vision of realism, but the dropship from Aliens, that works for you. Okay. It just struck me funny. That's all.
It's a good old
you
rule of
mentioning
cool.
realism
If it's
so
cool,
on.
if it's cool, and people don't question it so much.
I guess.
And in the end, for a lot of people, tank's just a tank.
Yeah.
I know that my daughter McCarver will be horrified at this news, but a tank's just a tank, I think, for a lot of people.
Yeah.
For a lot of people, not for everyone, obviously. But.
And occasionally you have a generational leap, and it's just like, oh my God, that's amazing. But honestly, I mean, at this point, it's dick around with active protection systems, sure. Maybe your targeting gets better. Maybe your gun caliber increases by a couple of millimeters. But it's a big armored box that uses a lot of fuel and a lot of resources and blows up other big armored boxes and occasionally buildings. That's it. That's all it does.
Yep.
With my apologies to Merkava. I'm a treadhead. I like tanks and I think they're cool. But I acknowledge that, you know.
Well, yeah, I shared with her a thread. It was on an alternate history forum where somebody said, you know, what if we basically stuck a turret from one on the body of another and everything? Just some of the tank designs that were put out there that was like one prototype ever made or something. Like, what if that went out? And that was probably, and I said that to her, and she's like, oh, I like tank shopping. And went through that. So some people like all that gear stuff. So that's why you get those big sections in these books with all the gear, you know, and the players look through all the gear, and then the GM says, okay, you know, you guys have got a Lee Enfield from 1914. The Party has a Lee Enfield from 1914. So, because it's a post-apocalyptic game. Yeah,
Right.
but we're the special team. Yeah, but you woke up 150 years late and the place was looted. Sorry.
Yeah.
But it's funny, like they've got all this as they've got their combat system and all the rest, and then they've got NPC fast kill, where if they get hit, you just roll a 1d10, and if you roll 1 to 2, there's no effect on combat. 3 to 4 may complete 2 actions next turn before death. 5 to 7 may complete 1 action before death. 8 to 10 immediate death. That's it. And,
Well, as combat mook rules go, I mean, I think that's not a bad one. That's not a terrible one.
Yeah.
Twilight 2000 kind of tries to keep things moving fast by saying, look, don't roll hit locations on bad guys. They're just bags of hit points.
Yeah.
Well, I did
the
the
same
big damn
thing.
heroes, but
I did the same thing in combat in conflict. I didn't worry about hit locations I just said named players and named NPCs. They get the full hit location and all the rest, but nameless NPCs don't. So if you've got General Gap there in command at his headquarters with nameless General 1, 2, and 3, and then a platoon of soldiers defending his headquarters, those poor nameless North Vietnamese army guys, they don't get hit locations. They just get rolled a hit and then see what the effect is. But Gap, he's General Gap. He gets hit locations.
Oh yeah.
So that's how I treated it. I like the human encounters. So this is the Morrow Project's. This is their vision of how the world comes out like 150 years after a nuclear war. They've done them in alphabetical order as well. Badges without the R in it. Badges as in what you wear on the chest.
Okay.
Weapons, shotguns, unrepaired, homemade. Special attributes, sneaky, vicious, and unpredictable. Description: badges travel around the country as self-styled lawmen, judge, jury, and executioner. They may pick as a victim anyone who, in their opinion, has disobeyed some vague, extinct legal system. Sometimes they are right, more often they are wrong. Ooh, I think somebody was a libertarian. And then there's ballooners. Often travel in flying cities connected by ropes. An airborne culture which comes to Earth for food and supplies. They are known to raid, but are basically traders. They are always searching for more dependable ways of staying aloft, like a dependable fusion power source.
Huh.
Bikers. The survivors of the classic motorcycle gangs. They do not always deserve their bad reputation. Ooh, someone was a member of a motorcycle gang.
I think so.
There's breeders. These people hunt throughout the country for the pure, unmutated, uncontaminated human stock. They are descended from a group of genetic scientists who survived the war. They believe there will be a super race to emerge from the chaos, as they refer to the war. There's cannibals, of course. MDs are descendants of or pupils of medical personnel who survived the war. And the Frozen Chosen, a fanatical group of religious power seekers who spent their power and savings to freeze themselves before the war in order to awake in a more tolerant age. There's Maxwell's militia, a leftover militia from somebody's little empire that he built. I like the new presidencies. After the war, new mini-governments sprang up all over the country, each claiming to be the official US government. Most are at best dictatorships, while some still follow a democratic government style.
Yeah, somebody was definitely a libertarian.
Yeah.
And
Soviets, descendants of Russian soldiers who, for one reason or another, found themselves in the United States. They have made a living out of hiding from the Americans, and in some cases do not realize the war is over After 150 years? Sorry, go on.
No, I was just going to say, I just wanted to circle back around to the Frozen Chosen. I knew a guy from Alaska who's of the Jewish faith, and he said, no shit, that's what they called themselves, the Frozen Chosen.
I want to know what the poor guys do. Like, if you're so far north, you're living in Alaska or Finland or something, if you have to light the candles at sunset, what do you do when you've got like 2 weeks of light? Do you just not do it?
I honestly don't know.
What if you're some Islamic guy who's living in northern Finland? Okay, Ramadan is 30 days you don't eat or drink from sunrise or sunset. We also have 30 days where there is no sunset at all. And you're like, no. I think these faiths are not made for these kind of extreme conditions.
Yes.
And then he's got. Then they've got your monster manual, basically.
Yes.
So there's a bunch of animals. Some.
Do we have mutated animals, Kyle?
Yeah, it's got some mutated animals.
If there aren't alligator bears or man hawks, then I don't know that this is the right role-playing.
Yeah, there's the blue undead, mutated humans in or near bomb craters in all areas. Their special attribute, they radiate 1,000 to 6,000 rads of radiation.
Good Lord.
Yeah, Rob Cocculus, the game master in Morrow Project, is called just a game master. Sorry, it's a bit boring, I know. Not project manager, but just game master.
I go with project manager.
There's mutated fish. They'll attack anything in the water. A giant member of the pike family. This fish can be compared to a freshwater shark. Though the pike is not attracted to blood in the water, it will attack someone swimming on the surface. They sometimes float on the surface, and when doing so, resemble a sunken log. Yeah, the blue undead radiating radiation. What else have we got? There's mutated bats, mutated grizzly bears, mutated porcupine. The mutated porcupines at least aren't aggressive. Scragger, a mutated human attracted to people and will use blunt humans. A throwback human to the level of the prehistoric era, most like a modern Neanderthal, except that, most like a modern Neanderthal?
How does that
except
work?
that their bodies are covered with hair. So what, they're Greek or something? Oh, hang on. Scraggers dislike normal humans and will attack any lone individuals or small groups they outnumber. And there's a mutated giant snake as well. Starting the game, your team consists of ex-volunteers who accepted the task of the Morrow project. Each of you is fully trained and incorporate all the standard issue equipment in the project given to yourself and the team. It is assumed, blah, blah, blah. Go out and do missions. GM will give you missions. They've got a bibliography. Oh, sorry, they've got an advertisement for another game, Holy Warriors, which I've never heard of before.
Yeah, that's a new one on me.
A module of faith. Oh, no, it's from Time and Time Again, the time travel role-playing game. And so it's an adventure module for it. A module of faith, intrigue, and death during the Crusades. Okay, so you get the Time and Time Again role-playing game, which I hear a distant bell, but it's ringing. But anyway. And there's a bibliography. Books used, Jane's Infantry Weapons, 1978, and so on. Modern Small Arms, Knife Throwing, a Practical Guide. Okay. And then there's military manuals, FM 1-15 Aviation Reference Data, FM 5-25 Explosives and Demolitions. Yeah, so they've got their whole bibliography there. Just think, like, this was some guy's personal library. It goes it goes to 2 full pages, the thing, and then they call it an expansion bit at the beginning, but really it's just It's got some additional skills,
Mhm.
and then it's got a character sheet, which is in it's been typed up, as in like literally typed up. That's that's the typeface of a 1980s or 1970s typewriter.
It is. That is. I think that is a little hard to tell on the webcam, but I think that is like a 10-point pica.
Yeah, so something like that.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's the Morrow project, boys and girls.
I wish
Um,
we.
as I said, a classic 1980s game with excessive detail.
I wish we had the time. I did this once with two games with uh, Star Trek: The Role Playing Game, the original from FASA from way back, and with Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay. I wish we had the time this evening to do a character generation. It's getting a little late in the evening to jump into that, but maybe we can have you back again and just for shits and giggles do a build one character and see how that goes in Morrow Project. I'm sure that like the original authors of the Morrow Project, first of all, that they're probably decent folks, but second of all, that they've been, oh well, you could do it now. It's a very simple process.
Well, they might have moved on. I don't know. The first one's name rings any bells, and I can't say for what. So it's by Kevin Dockery, Robert Sadler, and Richard Tucholka. And then there's artwork by Rick Irwin, Craig Starneman, H.N. Voss, and William Wardrop. And the photographer, presumably of the guns, is Carla Mitchell. So these guys are from out of Michigan, because it says the authors wish to thank the following individuals and organizations: the Order of Leibowitz of Oakland University, Metro Detroit Gamers Association, Michigan State University Science Fiction Society, the United States Armed Forces, Cadillac Gauge, and David Philpus, Paula George, Ben James, Carla Mitchell, Anna O'Connell, Lee Sadler, and Kevin Appleton for so thoroughly testing the medical system whenever he played the game. Whoa! Kevin obviously got shot a lot. Kevin Appleton for so thoroughly testing the medical system whenever he played the game. The original crew of Mars One, and all the people we forgot to mention before they yell at us for forgetting to mention them.
Yeah, I have the vaguest recollection because I've seen Morrow Project, and it didn't really. You can go away. Anyway, it didn't really dawn on me at the time the significance of it, but I think it's in one of the Morrow Project. It may be in the main book. I don't know if there were supplements or whatever, but there's like a target listing, like an extended target listing or something like that. But one of the missiles aimed at Chicago, because Chicago's important railhead, transport, logistics center. You can definitely make a case for Chicago getting hit. Was that one of the warheads from the MERV spread was an overshoot. It landed in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, like right in the lake, like buried itself in 4 feet of mud before detonating, and reduced Lake Geneva, Wisconsin to just basically a glass-bottomed lake. And for those of you, of course, who may not know this, Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, at the time it was written, was the home of TSR, creators of everything we hold dear. Somebody
that's one way to deal with the opposition.
Really didn't let, not just a little bit of tongue-in-cheek nukage of a town of about 5,000 people. Although, to be honest, if you look at projected strike maps, and this is true of everywhere, I am not one of those people that's like, if I just buy a shipping container and put 3 foot of earth on it, we'll be fine if somebody decides to do. You're building your own tomb, and you might be the last to die from radiation poisoning, or rather, you might be the last person to starve, but you will also be the last person to die of radiation poisoning. But you're just buying yourself a few extra months, is my opinion. But the point is that you know, regardless of whether you decided to pop Lake Geneva, it might seem bucolic and out in the country if you look at it on maps and everything. It's surrounded by enough stuff. They're going to get theirs. They'll see some very pretty fireworks that will likely break all their windows and maybe knock down a few houses on the edge of town. And then the bad stuff's going to start to happen. So,
yeah, when you're tossing out like 5,000 of the bloody things, then
yeah,
there's not many spaces where the circles don't overlap.
Yeah, the nightmare scenario: 4,800 warheads coming over the pole and going back across the pole will, God willing, never happen. But if it does, all the cargo shipping bomb shelters you've built in your backyard ain't going to save you. Not unless you want to stay in there for a couple of 100 years.
Well, I think there's a reason at Morrow Project they had to have the good old fictional freezing technology and make it 150 years later. Because something might have re-emerged by then.
Yeah.
And if you're frozen and have fusion power, well, maybe that'll be you. But absent that, yeah. So
I mean that.
Yeah. So that's the Morrow Project, the classic 1980s gonzo, excessively detailed role-playing game.
Well, it definitely sounds like something that might be fun for a one-off. I mean, I have to admit that when it comes to role-playing games, post-apocalypse, despite my little rant there about, oh, we're all as good as dead anyway, might as well hold hands and walk into the mushroom cloud, et cetera, it can be a fun genre to explore. Like, okay, what would you do to survive under these circumstances? And I think you can even take scenarios like the Morrow Project, where you're a sleeper unit meant to wake up 15 years after the nuclear war, except there's a computer error and you wake up 150 years after nuclear war, or even Gamma World or Twilight 2000. But you don't really have to do, okay, you've been shot in the hand, roll a d6 and subtract 1 to see which finger it is. So I think you can do it with better. I would dare say, if I can stick this out there, that it's something you could definitely do with conflict. Just have your wear conditions on all your weapons be as worse as possible, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the point that we make in just about every live stream, or it's probably every second live stream actually at this point, is that detail isn't necessarily realistic, and lack of detail isn't necessarily less realistic. Rollmaster was very detailed with different costs to improve skills based on your character's class, and there was a time when I had most of them memorized. You'd say to me, "Oh, stealth for the rogue," and I'd say, "Oh yes, that costs 1/4 or whatever." I just had a better memory then, and thought it was important, so my brain made space for that. It doesn't now. So, but I mean, it had magic and everything, so it wasn't at all, in any way, shape, or form realistic. But it was certainly detailed. So I have the conceit that this is, it's not detailed, but it is realistic. I think the detail is more. It's more interesting to have the detail in the people and the events in the game, rather than having the detail all packed in the rules.
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, I passed it by guys. So what I was saying at the beginning of the show for those who missed it, I got contacted by some guys in a Discord for a channel that has ex-military guys doing first-person shooters, and I mentioned role-playing games in passing, and then about 2 weeks later, a new member popped into that and then messaged me privately asking about role-playing games, and he said, and we messaged back and forth, and he said that Conflict sounded interesting to play, and then I got nervous because the guy Cliff is he's a combat veteran. U.S. Army with deployments overseas and stuff, and so putting the game up before a bunch of combat veterans, a game which purports to be realistic, it's a bit daunting. I was getting a bit scared, like, oh shit, these guys are going to tear me apart. But I thought, oh well, he will pull things up. But in the end, we had a fairly mixed group. I kind of rated them on the military experience just to put their comments in perspective on the same 0 to 3 scale that I use in Conflict, which is 0 with none. 1 is widely read or gamed or served in the reserves. So, if you've got a lot of tactical gaming experience, you've got some insights. You have a non-zero insight. So 1. 2, served regular or deployed, but deployed in a non-combat role, like a signaler or a truck driver or something like that. And then 3 with a combat deployment. So we had, of the 5 guys, we had 2 who had a combat deployment behind them, 1 who had been deployed but non-combat, and then another couple of guys who had done some sort of combination of reserves and did first-person shooters and had done that for years and so on. And they're all old blokes, as gamers go. They're all over 40. Mm-hmm. So we went through and they rolled up characters, and we just did a simple scenario. Did it online through a Google chat. We had 2 Cliffs, so we ended up just calling everyone by their characters' names. We had Clifford K and Clifford B. So, and Juan and Christian and Earl. So Cliff rolled up a character who was social class 0, and social class 0 is basically what society considers scum. We all may or may not consider them scum, but society considers them scum because they're homeless or they're schizophrenic or disabled or a recently arrived refugee or illegal immigrant, that sort of thing, or recently released felon, that sort of thing. People don't want to deal with it. You have that guy and he goes to the Hollywood party. It doesn't matter how good an actor and that he is. You know where he's from. So Cliff immediately named him Meth. And you roll up a skill from your background as well. So if your background is social class 0, you're more likely to get things like brawling. And if your background is social class 3, the upper class, you're more likely to get things like skiing and stuff. So he got brawling. And he ended up, his character did 3 terms in the military. So character generation is you go term by term. And he did 3 terms in the military and got firearms and a bit of first aid and good at searching people. And then Juan rolled up his character. He was social class 3 and education 3. So he had like a PhD. When he finished high school, he had a PhD level education. Must have been from all the private tutors he had.
Right.
So the group immediately named him Chad. Every time they said it, they called him Chad. Chad from Boston. And so he and he rolled up the for his background skill presence, and he chose the subset dressing. So he knows how to dress to impress, which along with his, which definitely said, yep, you're a Chad.
Yeah.
And so he went through his terms and he actually got promoted. And Cliff was really pissed off that Juan's character got promoted. It's like, my guy's got all this combat experience and you're just this Chad. because he got promoted, and when you get promoted, you can either roll again for another skill, or you can just choose a presence skill. So the classic one, of course, is presence leadership, but there's also presence intimidation, um, and other forms. You just get better at presenting yourself and getting people to listen to you. So he chose all the presence. So he's got presence expertise. He can dress well. He can put on accents. He can intimidate people. He can do everything, but he doesn't have any combat skills. Like he's got the default 0 level that everyone has, but yeah, but he has an observation skill. So that little scene in one of the Bourne movies where he says, I can tell you the license plates of all the cars outside. I can tell you the most likely place to find a weapon is in the cabin of that truck over there. I can tell you that guy's 225 and knows how to handle himself. Blah blah blah. That's observation skill. So he had presence and observation after 2 terms in the army, and he outranked a Lance Corporal Meth. Christian did 1 term and then a term of commando, as did the next 2, and he ended up with strength expertise. So he became Commando Private Hulk. He's got strength and explosives, and then. And the other one got intimidation and firearms, and also became a stealth expert. So everyone got issued an M4 and a SIG, pistol sidearm, and a knife, and then could take other weapons as appropriate. So the guy with top strength took a saw, took a machine gun, but he's like, I've got stealth. I'm going to sneak up with a knife. In fact, I'm going to take a machete and call myself Private Trejo. And but Trejo doesn't use stealth. He just walks up to them and hacks them with his machete. It doesn't matter. That's what I'm going to do. And then the last one was he rolled up. He went into the intelligence branch hoping to get interview skills and stuff, but he ended up with being a comms officer, not officer, but communications, getting tech communications. So they called him Private Verizon. Apparently that's a company over in the US, Verizon or something. So they called him Private Verizon. So we had Lance Corporal Meth.
All right. Yeah, Verizon. I got you. Sorry, a little slow on the uptake, but I got you now.
So we had Lance Corporal Meth, Corporal Chad, Commando Private Hulk, Commando Private Trejo, and Intel Private Verizon, they called him. Oh no, I'm French. Verizon. And their mission was to go off to a base scattered around, looking for a high value target, and if possible to grab the high value target and then get the hell out of there. And it was specifically stated, we're not interested in you having big firefights with everyone. It's just, we're just interested in this one guy and some intel. And Rob, we can talk about recon another time. I've got that. So they went in there and they were so damn unlucky. They failed every damn roll. So they actually got ambushed by insurgents. And the insurgents brassed them up really thoroughly. So Lance Corporal Meth got a minor head wound, and Corporal Chad got a severe torso wound and a minor right arm wound. And Commando Private Hulk got a severe right arm wound and a minor trunk wound. The other 2 were unwounded. They went pretty sick with the weapons. Like Private Hulk, he had the machine gun. Oh, you're strong. You carry the machine gun.
Sure.
And so after his right arm had just been wrecked by gunfire, I say, okay, you can't fire the you can't fire the machine gun anymore. And he's like, but my character is strong. My character, my guy's the guy who can, bench 300 pounds and stuff, and deadlift 600 pounds. Why can't I use a machine gun in my offhand? And I said, well, you can, but it'll be inaccurate. So he's got his wrecked right arm, and he pulls it in his left hand, and he's just letting it rip, firing off with the other. And I think Cliff was still pissed off at not being the senior guy, because amongst the players, he's the guy who's like done the most tours and has got the most experience and stuff. So right. he sees himself, probably very rightly, as the one most qualified to be in charge. And Corporal Chad, well, Juan's got quite a bit of experience. He obviously knows what the fuck he's doing. As much as I'm in a position to judge that, but he obviously knows what the fuck he's doing. But he was taking the piss a bit with his, Corporal Chad and stuff. He was having. I got the feeling there was someone that they both knew that they were making fun of in real life. Right. So I think Cliff playing Lance Corporal Meth, he was a bit pissed off, so he just wanted to blow shit up. So he's like, "Can I take, get the AT4?" Yeah, sure, you can have an AT4. In fact, he said, "Can I take 2 of them?" Like, yeah. And he wanted to take 3, and I said, "I don't think you can carry 3 AT4s. I'm not sure how that would work." And the other guys all having with like at least 3 out of the 5 having carried AT4s around, go, "No, man, just stop trying to rip him off," And yeah, so he carried 2 AT4s and that, and he was a bit annoyed too to find himself moving more slowly because he was encumbered during the firefight when they got ambushed. They did all the right and sensible things. They did a counter ambush. They went at the insurgents, the squad of righteous fury, and that's so they went right at them. They did all the right and sensible things, but they were moving slowly because they were encumbered. So most of them just dropped their packs and immediately sped up. But he wasn't carrying a pack. He deliberately left, sleeping bag and all that behind so he could carry AT4s. He's like, "God damn it, I'm just going to sleep on the ground."
And for those of you playing along at home, the AT4 weighs 15 pounds. So he's humping 30 pounds of just anti-tank missiles.
He also insisted on carrying 6 grenades. He's like, I can fit 4 on my armor. And I'm going to have another 1 in each of my ammo pouch. And like, yeah, okay, whatever.
That is dedication to craft right there. That is taking a stereotype and sticking with it. I want 2 anti-tank missiles. My game doesn't have tanks. I want 2 anti-tank missiles. You can have 2 anti-tank missiles.
Yeah. Well, I told him the insurgents aren't going to have tanks. Most they'll have technicals and stuff, and they might be dug in or something. But he's like, "No, I want AT4s." Okay. And so during the counter ambush drill, he immediately threw 2 of his grenades in quick succession, and he was trying to run up. And I had it all mapped out and that. And so the next position of cover was like 3 meters away. But because he was so loaded up with all that shit, with all the explosives, he could only move 1. Now, his character had readiness 2, so he could move 2. He'd move 1 and then 1, but he'd still be 1 meter short. So he's like, "Damn it!" And he said, "So if I fire off both the AT4s, will that drop my encumbrance down that I can move, now move faster?" And I said, "Yes." He says, "Radio." So he fires off, boom, and then fires the next one off, boom. And then for good measure, he could now move, but for good measure, he then threw another 2 grenades after that. So it was, I felt that they were being true to the American spirit, because in the midst of all this firing the explosives, I think it was Juan who said, it's this point that we would normally call for 500 pounds of American aid to be dropped on their position.
Sounds like that target grid needs a little bit of freedom.
Yeah. So, um, so they did that, and I think he was left with 2 grenades at the end. I think he fired these 2 AT4s and thrown 6 of his 8 grenades. He was left with 2 at the end.
I mentioned this series before, and this sounds like it would have been exactly up the alley of this YouTuber who YouTubes himself and his fellow gamers doing stupid stuff in Arma, which is a first-person shooter that is very militarily realistic. And they played a game variation where you play insurgents, and for the longest time they had played insurgents against a Soviet invasion. So all their gear was stuff they'd nicked from dead Russians and raided from. So they were like, fighting the Russians, it's just getting boring, and it's the same gear over and over again. And we've got a BMD-1 that we stole. Whoopee. Let's restart the game and be insurgents against the Americans. And they did this, and they basically have a montage of them getting to quote Bruce Willis from Die Hard, butt fucked on live TV, because every time they tried to move around during the day, drone strike, Apache strike, A-10 strike. Every time they tried to assault a position, out would roll an M2 Bradley and start shooting their technicals with TOW anti-tank missiles, which are designed to punch through the front of a T-80 tank. And after getting massacred for like the 4th or 5th time, one of the players remarks, "I think what we've learned here is that Americans have no chill."
Well, this scenario didn't allow them to do that much because the usual premise of conflict is that you go through your regular career and then you retire from that, and then you go off and do some private military stuff or covert operations or something. And the premise is simply because role-playing gamers need adventure and they need autonomy. Gamers don't respond very well to a chain of command and being told, no, you're not allowed to do that. So they need a degree of autonomy. So there needs to be a kind of an amount of chaos in the setting, where they don't just get bailed up by the local cops and then spend 20 years and like, yeah, but it was self-defense. Yeah, that was self-defense, but the collateral damage around you was not. It's or spend the next 2 years dealing with the ensuing court cases. So you need a degree of chaos in the setting, and you need a degree of autonomy for the players. So having that, you've retired, now you go off and do covert ops, or there's post-apocalyptic or whatever, kind of gives that. The downside of that for the players is that they don't tend to have as much backup. They can't just call in a drone strike or whatever. So anyway, after they'd been ambushed, they had a number of wounds, and they decided to press on. It was the conflict equivalent of just one more room, as we do in D&D.
Let's just kick in one more door, guys. We're fine. We're out of Cure Light Wound spells, and Bless is no longer in effect, and we're all nicked up to about 40% of our hit points. But one more room, what's that going to hurt?
Exactly. So they went on to the actual base and recce'd around it, and that went pretty well. And so then they snuck in, and one of them stepped on a landmine. It was just shitty luck. One of them stepped on a landmine. Who stepped on a landmine? Clifford B. Trejo. He didn't even get to sneak in and stab anyone. So he had his whole character concept of stabbing. So this is why you don't have character concepts. You let it develop in play, because he had his whole concept of sneaking around, stabbing people, and he didn't get to because he was sneaking along with his knife, and he stepped on a landmine. And it didn't instantly kill him, but he had multiple severe wounds. He was pretty bad.
Oh, yeah.
So once that went up, and the guys on the base, they turned on their lights and were flashing their lights around and everything, and just everything went to shit. And the players, I thought it was funny because like the guys with the tactical experience, they were actually, in some respects, the least interested in using real tactics. I distinctly remember Cliff playing meth and saying, "I'm not sorry, not Cliff playing meth." Cliff mentioned the movie. Yeah, Cliff mentioned Predator, and then Christian, playing his super strong character, said, "Is there like a truck on the outskirts of their camp that I could like lift up and push into the camp?" Like Arnie and Predator. So yeah, they tried. Yeah, so they went in. The insurgent camp wasn't like a full on permanent camp or whatever. It was a point where that they
A
dossed
logger
down for the
point,
night.
yeah.
Yeah, they just dossed down for the night and that. So they had the contact with the players, and all of them got multiple severe wounds, and they're all down except Earl, who was down with his severe wound, is knocked out, and he wakes up all bleary eyed. Like a couple of rounds later, all bleary eyed, and he sees his mates all bleeding around him, and the insurgents fucking off because the insurgents had no interest whatsoever in having this big contact with the Americans. They just wanted to get out of there. So they didn't even spend time to go around doing a double tap in everyone's heads. They just got out of it. So Earl's like this, he's covered in wounds, and basically he was going to have time because all the other guys were bleeding out. They had mortal wounds, severe and mortal wounds. They're bleeding from multiple wounds. So essentially, once he'd stopped himself from bleeding out, he was going to have time to save one of those four guys. Because by the time he finished him, the others were going to be done. And they were discussing and arguing over that when we called it a session. And so he was just joking around going, which one of you is more likely to buy me beers after this?
Yes, there you go. There you go.
So, yeah.
It is kind of suspicious at gaming tables. The guy who happens to show up with your favorite beer has some very favorable die rolls come their way. Players, I'm just for future reference for anyone.
Yeah. So the feedback, I'm just looking at their feedback.
Sure.
So, yeah, it's as I said to you the other day, Bill. The feedback was interesting. There's a few minor details about the use of weapons and stuff like that. I might do some edits later on to the rules. But the guy with a lot of RPG experience, he struggled with the idea that if it's not listed on your character sheet, you can still do it. Maybe not as well, but you can still do it. But the guys with military experience had no problem with that. And I think it's because in the military, you get shoveled into jobs. And if you're lucky, you've done a course on it. You've done the gunner's course, or you've done the signaler's course, or whatever. Mm-hmm. And you have the role, and it's expected that if you don't know how to do it, you'll figure it out, or you'll find out, or you talk to somebody, or you'll ask. No, and even if you've done the course, it's not like the Bob got 65% in the signaler course and Joe got 70% in the signaler course, so we'll give the radio to Joe. That doesn't happen. You either pass or you don't pass, and then they keep you doing the course until you do pass. So everyone passes, right? And it's just reality isn't as resolvable as all these little courses are. Not in that fine detail. So the guys with military experience had no problem with that. It was because it was like, well, yeah, it doesn't list a firearms assault rifle skill for me, but I did recruit course, so I know which end the round comes out. It's I know how to pull it apart and put it back together. It's not. They had no problem with, okay, you've got firearms assault skill. Okay, so you're the squad's designated marksman. They had no problem with that. The ex-military guys. And as well, interestingly, the guys with a lot of first-person shooter experience got not having much of a skill list. Because, of course, in a first-person shooter, you usually don't. You just have your character running around with different guns. You upgrade your guns, but you don't upgrade your character.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, so it was interesting. It's sort of a mindset thing, which comes back to what we've said many times, that when you have these kinds of old school games, these kinds of old ones, people who haven't gamed before don't have a problem with it. It's the ones who've played a lot of D&D 3.5 or whatever who do have a problem with it.
Yeah, that's very true. I can take, generally speaking, like the people who want to sample OD&D and AD&D and other old school games, and I think this will hold true of Conflict when I run modern games, start getting out and doing that more. The people who seek them out as soon as they experience that freedom, that liberation, man, they think it's the greatest thing in the world. I don't have to have it. I didn't have to spend time deciding on whether library use was more important than high society to get ahead in your game. I can just tell you what I want to do, and we can do it. And they say hallelujah. And then the people who come in brand new and they've never played role-playing games, maybe they picked it up from watching Stranger Things or whatever. They know what a role-playing game is, and they want to sit down and try it. You don't hit them with, well, no, you can't just ask where the bathroom is. You have to roll on the table, So you come at you come at them with a game like Conflict or AD&D or what have you, and they're like, yeah, I'm going to try and get in by asking if I can use the bathroom. Okay. Maybe you throw a reaction roll if the person's got a really high or really low charisma.
And this was the other. It wasn't feedback that I got, but it was an observation that I made. The ones who just had the first-person shooter experience or tabletop gaming experience, they when I said, okay, what do you guys do? They gave me this whole long list of things, and then I'd have to explain. No, you could just do 1, 2, or 3 things in a session, in a combat round, and then next combat round you can do this other thing, and next combat round you can, and so on. They'd give me a whole list of things. I want to do all this and this and this and this. But the guys with a bit more military experience, they actually erred on the other side. I'm going to do this round. And I go, yeah, you've got 2 actions, so you can do something else as well. Oh, okay. In that case, I'll do this and then this, And then they also got, they said that the military guys said the readiness, because thing made sense, because like Juan only had readiness 1. Sorry, his character Chad only had readiness 1, but Cliff had readiness 2, so he did 2 actions versus 1 action. That made sense to them because they said, yeah, there's always that guy who's a little bit behind the others, and there's always that guy who's a fucking Audie Murphy who just runs around doing a zillion things. But yeah, so that was my observation, that the guys with just RPG experience would give a whole long list of things that they wanted to do in a combat. Generally, it's different, but in a combat. Whereas the guys with some experience, not necessarily in combat, but it felt the weight of the pack on their back or something, would tend to just be very conservative in what they said they would do. They'd just be 1 step at a time kind of guys. So that was a different perspective. So that's why I recorded their level of military experience or knowledge or whatever. Or police. I haven't had any police tried out, but all police would apply this in the same way.
Right on.
Because I think that our experiences will obviously shape our perspective and what we think is good and sensible.
For sure. And that is the one thing. And you guys who've listened to or watched Kyle and I play Conflict on the show, which I apologize, I don't have those links to hand, but you should definitely go back and watch them. God bless you for your patience, Kyle, because how many times have you said, well, you can do 2 things, Bill? Oh, right. Yeah. Okay. I'll because I am stuck in AD&D mode 99% of the time, where it's like I attack with my longsword. That's it. You're done. There's no and. There's no also. So I just it's a rules thing that I in my brain just have to fine tune. And I again thank you for your patience in those times. You're like, I'll throw a grenade and oh
Well, you know, the flip side of that is that there's the one with the readiness 0. They can do something if they ambush you, but they can't do anything in combat. But when they're planning an ambush, that's not combat yet. So you can get like the completely inexperienced person who just jumps on you. And if they get you, if they actually, you know, they surprise you and they stab you 6 times and they knock you down, okay, great. But then you just, if they don't hurt you, you just turn around and you say, "Excuse me," and then they go, and they freeze up. Then they're in trouble. That's in one of the scenarios on my blog, thevikinghatgm.com.
mhm.
One of the scenarios there is that Abby McCarver goes into a pub and she chats up the wrong guy, and Slapper Ginger decides to ambush her in the bathroom with a gin bottle.
Right.
And you know, she swings it at her and misses or doesn't hurt her badly or whatever. And then, you know, Abby McCarver just turns and looks at her like, "What?" So then Ginger's like, "Oh shit!" But she'd surprised her, and therefore she could do things. And this is how you get as well, even like militia with 0 training or 0 training. But if you give them a rifle, they can ambush somebody. And any vaguely competent military is then going to do the counter ambush drill, and all those guys are going to do is just run away because that's all they can do. They don't have any training to do anything more. But they could just like see you and surprise you and shoot at you if they can surprise you. If you spot them first, then you know they're in trouble. But so yeah. So there's 0, 1, 2, or 3 actions, but most player characters are going to have 1 or 2.
Right.
And some will have 2. So, yeah. But yeah, it's interesting how people's different background changes their perspective and how they behave. And I just thought it was hilarious that the guys would, you know, as far as I could tell, in my ignorance, as far as I could tell, the most combat experience and tactical knowledge, they were only kind of half-assed about their tactical approach. They were like, "Yeah, I'm going to take 2 AT4s. Can I have a third?" Though I don't know, they might have just been trying to push the boundaries, and it might have been. I can't be bothered reading the rules. I'll see if Kyle knows what the fuck he's talking about by pushing him a bit. So I don't know. I'll have to talk to them further. I would like to be able to get them together again for another online game, but I don't know if it'll be able to happen. It seems like that was very much a spontaneous one-off. But it was fun anyway.
Well, it sounds great, and if I was going to pick any nits, it's that you didn't put a technical in there for one of those AT4s to be used on. But I understand you can't have everything in just a one-off session. But no, Conflict, guys, if you haven't played it, I've been scrolling the link. It's right down there. Go pick up a copy right now. It is good, fast-paced, visceral fun. And I mean, yeah, okay, I can say that bias because Kyle's my co-host and whatever. I would say that anyway. It's a damn good lightweight RPG. And I just lost a studio light, by the way. So for those of you sitting there readying Baker Street by Jerry Rafferty, the sax solo part, you can play it now because I'm in total mood lighting at this point. But you can see my Christmas lights a little bit better. But yes, do go get Conflict. Check it out. I would be keen to try it with some different genres someday. Because I think
there's a Lulu link as well. If you want the printed version. which I think is better.
Yes,
I
that
like
is up on screen there. The Lulu link for a printed copy. I have my copy. It's not to hand because my table is in chaos right now, but I have a wonderful copy of Conflict, and it's a great RPG. You guys should absolutely give it a try. So, moving forward, because I know we're coming up on we got a wrap here in just a couple minutes. Next week, starting next week, I think Kyle will go on Tuesday. Yes, is that the plan?
Yes, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
So we will do Tuesdays is 2 for Tuesday. You're going to get AD&D live stream in the early afternoon, midday, morning, wherever you're at. Depend, however it comes on for you, whatever time. And then in the evening, I'll be back with Kyle and I, where we will fix all your damn RPG problems and put this industry back on track like it should be, and just talk about stuff that's fun. As for myself, tomorrow I will be back again. We'll do more Christmas Advent, open line. We'll talk about whatever you guys want to talk about, whatever I want to talk about, role-playing game related, whatever comes up. Kyle, as always, thank you, sir. It's good to see you again. Thank you for sticking with us and coming back. Thank you to the awesome audience we had tonight. Give yourself a hand. We had a great, Paul says, conflict Napoleonic when? I'm going to leave that up to Kyle. I think it would stay the same, but you'd have to drop down rates of fire. A lot more cavalry sabers and a lot lower volume of fire. Otherwise, the same. But I'll leave that to you, Kyle. I don't want to step on your toes. Guys, have a fantastic evening. Thank you all for being here. Like I said, we had a fantastic audience. Rob just burning up the chat. All you guys were awesome. Thanks for sticking by and watching. Oh, now our audience starts to blow up. Kyle's got to go. My lights are dead. All right. Peace, everyone. Be well. Take care of yourselves. And I'll see you all tomorrow at the usual time. Bye-bye.